All right, we're on. Hey, Gary. This is Carey Nordstrand here again. I'm doing another episode of my herding cats interviews. We're doing Zoom interviews with players who've found the Acinonyx base, aka cat base, and are enjoying it. And I just wanted to try to get some feedback to tell people who might be considering one of these things how it's worked out for pretty notable list of players. So today we have Gary Wicks, and Gary, I know you're working at MI Musicians Institute in
Yeah.
Hollywood. Can you flesh out your career a little bit, just give people some background, and also thanks for doing this and welcome.
Well, absolutely, Carrie. Thanks for asking me. I was psyched when you asked me if I would want to do this, because I've been a fan of your handiwork, your bass skills. I consider you the bass tech guru of Southern California. Well, of larger than California, but so you asked me to be a part of this is really cool for me. Um, my background, I'm a doubler, upright and electric. So I'm always looking for, um, because of that, I do a lot of different genres, a lot of different styles. And so I'm always looking for gear, for instruments that can accommodate that can help me find another corner. And so, yeah, I mean, I came up doing both basses, went to school for classical bass at New England Conservatory in Boston. And then a couple years ago, I went back to school for jazz studies at USC. And I've done some touring gigs. For about 6 years. I worked with the vocal group the Manhattan Transfer, and some other notable vocalists like Matthew Morrison, John Lloyd Young, a lot of Broadway stars, um, and a lot of jazz happens. Get a lot of calls for that. I find in this industry, it's once people know you for one thing, that's what they want to call you for.
Right.
So I think more people think of me as an upright player, but I actually started on electric, and it's still one of my passions. So I have more electric basses than upright basses. I don't know what that says, but yeah, and
It,
yeah,
it might just say that upright basses are really expensive. That's one thing it might say.
it might,
Yeah.
it definitely might. Um, but I guess just that I have a kind of a varied collection of electric basses. Um, and the first bass I ever learned on electric bass was a short scale bass, was an original Gibson EBO that belonged to my dad, who was a bass player who started me on bass. Um, so I started with a short scale bass. So it's
Cool.
sort of it feels a little bit of a full circle story for me at the moment to now come back to looking for a short scale bass to find the cat bass. Um,
Yeah.
and although there are a lot of differences from the EBO to the cat bass.
Right. Sure.
But
Sure. Well, yeah.
yeah,
So what do you do at MI now? You just, I mean, what's your role over there? And how is that going given the current state of
yeah.
things?
Well, the current state of things sort of put a hold on that. I have not been actively involved over there since the lockdown
Okay.
happened. What I was doing before the lockdown, I was there just one day a week, but I was
Okay.
involved with. I'm one of the guys that there's a couple of us over there that do both basses, upright and electric. So one of the things I would teach is an introduction to upright bass for electric bass players. It's a class, but it's limited to two people, so it was really more of like a private lesson essentially.
Okay.
Um,
Cool. Cool.
and
All
what I
right.
would do if I had two people sign up is I would split the hour, because when I would try to work with two students who were at different levels, it was really
Mhm.
tough to keep both people engaged. So I said, you know what, you come for the first half, you come for the second half, so you can give you my full attention. So I would do
Cool. Cool.
that. One of the uh, teachers for one of the they call them live performance workshops, which is essentially a rehearsal band. Um,
Right.
and so I was one of the guys for the traditional jazz um, live performance workshop. They would have a faculty member for each instrument: keyboards, bass, drums, guitar. So
Right.
I would be the bass teacher for that. So I would, we'd listen to the students play, give them feedback, try in a very small window of time, say, okay, here's how you play jazz. Good luck.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah.
Private lessons, and then as schedules change, there are a lot of different performance workshops I would be part of as they would come and go, as they would try out a new concept and see if it would last. So essentially,
Cool.
mostly ensemble and playing a private lesson playing.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like you've been involved in educating a lot too, in terms of giving lessons outside, even outside of MI. And
Yeah, I've taught at a
yeah,
few other schools too, and
okay,
private lessons. I have a few private students as well. Um,
cool.
yeah, um, I think I
Mm-hmm.
bring kind of a unique perspective to teaching because I went the conservatory route on the upright for classical studies.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that foundation. But an electric bass, I never really had formal electric bass lessons. I'd have a hang with a bass player here or there, and I would glean something. But a lot of
Mm-hmm.
my foundation came from the upright. A lot of
Okay.
my electric bass playing is uh, a combination of what I learned on the upright and what I learned from transcribing and recording, listen to
Mm-hmm.
recording, and then kind of combine the two. So when I work with students on electric bass, a lot of times I see a myriad of weird techniques. And so I kind of bring an interesting perspective to helping students with that because I came from an interesting route to get there. I didn't start an electric, stay with electric, and have an electric teacher.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah,
Right on. Right on. All right. Good deal. All right. So tell me about getting to know this base, you're learning awareness of it. I know, we're friends on social media and follow each other, and I know you probably saw the whole process from the beginning.
yeah,
But just kind of relate how it ended up when you finally got one, and whatever your process was of learning about this instrument,
sure.
and to the point of where you got one and started exploring it.
Yeah. So the process goes back to me already knowing you, already having some Nordstrom pickups in one of my basses, and preamp, to already having the Starlifter. So I had all that before Cat Base happened. So I was well aware of, following your your innovations and the goings on at the shop, get the newsletters and whatnot. So from the moment you made anybody aware that something was happening, it was a blip in my radar. I said, "Ooh, what's he up to now?"
Yeah.
And,
Cool.
I remember early on seeing you posted like I don't know what you call that. Looked like a blueprint of what like the mock up of what the base would look like,
Yeah.
compared to the Goya, and I was like, oh, this, I felt like this looks like some kind of space age technology. I like this. Um,
Hmm.
it felt to me like it was bridging retro with futuristic. You know, uh,
Cool. Right
and
on. That's what I was trying to do. Yeah.
nailed it.
Yeah. Cool. Good
So I was
deal.
following that, and then I don't remember at this point what the pretenses of why I was at your shop. It might have been for getting the Starlifter, it might have been something else, but you showed me an early prototype.
Mhm.
Maybe it was the first one you made. I don't remember. And I played it and just thought, what what is going on here? This is amazing. Because in my mind, probably because of my experience with the EBO, short scale bass in my mind always meant it's not all the way there. It's a good crossover for a guitar player. A guitar
Mhm.
player should probably have a short scale electric bass, so when they need to do some bass, they have something that would be fairly comfortable to their hands, right? Uh,
Right.
and so, in my mind, a short scale bass is never a bass that would be on par with like a Fender Jazz bass or a P bass or a modern 5 string. It wouldn't be able to keep up,
Hmm.
technically. Like if somebody put a chart in front of you that excuse me, that required excuse me, sorry, that required some more advanced technique, some slapping and popping or what have you, that it just would never be able to deliver. And so I remember
Right.
playing your, early cat bass and saying,
Mhm.
well, this doesn't compute, right? Like my preconceived opinion that this was not fitting with. And I remember being confused and in excited is probably the right word to say. I was like, about the idea of this possibility. Like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
So that was my original encounter with it, and then saw when when you posted that they're available, and me thinking, this isn't the time to spend money on any more
Yeah.
gear.
Right.
And I had that in. I literally gave myself a pep talk when I was on my way out to your shop for Mo to do some work on my I think it was my P bass. And I remember like I'm gonna see these cat bases. You are not buying anything. I remember having this conversation with myself on the drive in, and then being there and looking at them, and Mo saying, "You should try one." And I'm thinking in my head, "Don't play it. Don't do it." And so, okay, he's like, "I'm gonna be a few minutes of this. Go ahead and enjoy." I'm like, "Oh, all right, all right." So I played it, and then when I was leaving, I was like, he's like, you should talk to Carey about it. I'm like, now's not the time. I'm not gonna. And then I think it was within a week I texted you like, so are there any still left? Because
Right.
like, most of the ones in the shop had like a note on it, like who it was going to or something to that. You know, you had everything organized. So I was thinking, well, I'm probably safe. There's probably no more left. I can just move on. And you're like,
Right.
yeah, sure, let me know. Like, oh,
Awesome.
yeah. So as you know, that's what happened. But I immediately took it. I don't know if it was that night or the next night I had a rehearsal and I brought it with me. I was like, and it was a group that really requires a lot of 5-string, a lot of low notes. But I knew there was 1 or 2 songs that I could use it on, and where I wouldn't need anything lower than an E. And I brought it with me. I couldn't wait to use it in a band setting to see how it sat in the room. You know how it carried itself sonically, and it was great. You know, because hello, there's Nordstrom Electronics in there. It's gonna work.
Yeah.
And but then just playing it is really it's really fun because the size of it, the scale of it, you know, for left-hand stuff, it makes a lot of things a lot easier.
Right.
And yeah, and as I was saying before, the versatility factor, that's something I'm always looking for in basses. You know, there's some basses you want because like you want a P bass because you want the P bass sound, right?
Right.
There's other basses you might want to be more of a versatile instrument that you can find it's useful in more than one setting, so you're not switching instruments. And right away, this kind of fell into that category between having the 2 pickups and all the preset EQs. I found like, you know, where on every other bass, I'm twiddling with the knobs to get a certain tone to sit just right for that tune. This bass, plunk. I'm like, oh, there it is.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. And so,
Cool.
yeah, so it's like right away, I found myself at first, my go-to is to just put everything all wide open, both pickups on, tone all the way on, and just go from there.
Cool.
And that was my first point of departure. And then I just started, you know, as I got more comfortable with it, I started experimenting with what different sounds can I get. And of course, when you incorporate a pedal board and you're going for different sounds, I had a revelation on a gig where Cherish the Day, the Sade song got called.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But there's a Robert Glasper cover that's a more modern take on it that they were referencing. So I was kind of bridging the gap with the original bass line, which is really fun to play, and then the modern twist. And I just got this thought, like, what if I just try to be the traditional bass player? And I put it on the most like the third button in where you get the most
Super dark. Yeah.
super dark, and I put on an octave pedal and I played everything up high, and it sounded like a crazy synth bass.
Yeah.
And right away, and also when the bass doesn't come in right away. So once I did come in, I remember the piano player turned and looked at me and just went, "Whoa!" And,
It's fun.
I really get that reaction in a good way. Usually, if that's happening, I've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And I was giddy. It was so fun to play because the size made it really easy, and all this discovery of all the tones that were so easy to pull out of this instrument.
Yeah.
So
right
that's
on.
my journey with that's what I've been doing with it, and I was just tracking something for someone like a pre-production track before I go into during their session tonight, and I was using the cat bass and because this was like a more of a hard rock tune. I went for the all open setting at first, and I was like, let's just see here, and started playing around, and it's just really fun because for me, I'm not well versed in the sound engineer knowledge of frequencies, and when someone's like, "Oh, you need to cut a little of 200K or blah blah blah,"
Right.
wait, let me do the math. What does that mean?
Right.
And so it's really kind of liberating to have these presets where maybe it's not perfect for that given moment, but just to be able to press a button and get really close right away. I've never been that fast at dialing in an EQ. I'm usually kind of sitting there with the amp or the preamp for a little while trying to find that right sound, and as you know, with like recording stuff and live stuff, there's always differences, and one particular song, one setting is going to sit really well, and like I've discovered, like, oh, I get a great bass sound by myself, and then when it's in the track,
Right.
like, oh, it's not cutting. I love that fullness, but that's not working. And
Right.
and I find that these presets make it really easy to expedite that process to
Yeah.
the right sound quickly.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to be able to just, especially if you're working with somebody and you play a little bit and then you go, how about this one? And then how about this one? And then like, oh, somebody gets excited about that song. All right, let's play it all together and see how that fits. And
Yeah.
then, you can just kind of click through different things. And one of the things I dig about it is how repeatable it is. I mean, they're just switches. You can always go back to that exact sound.
Hmm.
You're not tweaking your tone knob a tiny bit or adjusting your pickup blend a tiny bit or setting EQs or anything. It's just simple and always the same.
Yeah.
So I
That,
think that's an asset. So
yeah, especially if you're which a lot of us freelance musicians are in this boat right now. A lot of recording, a lot of home recording. If you do a take and then because I'll do this, I'll send off a quick first take to the client and say, is this, because we're not in the studio together working on things, so there's a
hmm
little bit
hmm
back and forth. I'll fire off a take and say, hey, is this, in the right, is this what you're looking for? And they'll be like, yeah, except on the bridge, can you do this thing differently? And with this bass, if I'm gonna punch in and make an edit, like you said, I can dial that sound in exactly, instead of like
right.
if it was my P bass and I might have accidentally knocked the knob when I put it on the rack and didn't
Yeah.
see that. And so subtle that I might not hear it right away. And then I listen back to the take and I'm like, ooh, you can hear it's two different things.
hmm
Maybe that's a bit of a rookie mistake, but still these presets definitely keep you from making that kind of mistake.
Cool.
You know?
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. So how many how much have you been using this for studio and session work over the last
Um,
several months or however long you've had the bass? I mean,
um, Well, I mean, it's the amount of workflow is kind of ebbs and flows. Like over the summer, I was getting a decent amount of remote session work.
hmm
I noticed things kind of fell off a bit right around the time that the federal $600 a week stopped.
hmm
I don't-
hmm
I got less calls around that. I don't know
right.
what's
Yeah. Who knows?
yeah.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of activity the last couple months. Things have started picking up right around now.
hmm
Got a few sessions I'm working on this week. Um,
Cool.
it I would say when I'm doing stuff on electric bass, it's for the most part been a mix of using my P bass and that cat bass. Uh,
Cool.
a couple of times that somebody's wanted 5 string, and I use my Cruise 5 string that I've got the Nordstrom big splits in. Uh,
Hmm
Really kind of rotated between those three basses, but not the 5 string as much. Um, so yeah, it's really been like half and half the P bass and the cat bass. Um,
Cool.
yeah, really sort of depending once again on the vibe of what they're looking for.
I think I remember you telling me a story about how somebody sent you a track to put bass on, and you usually use a P bass for this particular person. And you thought you had just recently gotten the cat bass, and you were like, you know what? I'm going to try something on this. I'm going to send him a track with this,
Yeah,
and not tell him,
yeah,
and see how it pans out. So tell me that story again. That was fun.
yeah. It's a friend of mine. He's been working on a movie script and doing the music for it, and so I've been tracking a lot of different stuff for him, and I've done different basses for different things, and every time I end up using the P bass, he loves it. I mean, who doesn't love a classic P bass?
Right. Sure.
Um, and so yeah, I had just gotten the bass. It might have even just been that weekend I had gotten it, and I think I had already done one take with the P bass, but it wasn't solid. I needed to go back and double check some things, and I said, you know what, let's just do a different take with the cat bass. And so I did it and got a good take, and I liked the sound. I don't recall what sound settings I dialed in. I'm gonna guess it was probably something a little more vintage sounding, so probably like the first button in, just the slight cut. Um,
Right.
uh, and anyhow, I loved the way it sat in the mix. The darkness kind of was similar to the P bass, but there was more of like a punch, more of a
Mm.
mid range punch to it. That just kind of like that's the best way I can describe the difference of what I was getting between the two basses. So I sent it off to him, and he was happy with the take, but he did notice something was different. And he's like, "Man, is that your P bass? I mean, it's real." I wish I could remember what he said, but it was something to the effect of like, "Yeah, it was like real, like it was like real punchy, like
Yeah.
itchy." And I was like, "No, that wasn't. That was." Then I took a picture and sent him the picture of the cat face. I'm like, "That was
Yeah.
my new acquisition." And he said, "Wow." I was like, "That thing's cool."
Cool.
Yeah, and
Right on.
yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah, so it
Very
was
cool.
great because, like, the difference was noted, but it wasn't in like a what happened to your sound?
Yeah. What did you do to your? Yeah.
What did
What crap?
you do?
Yeah.
It was more like, wow, you did something different this time, and I really like it.
Hmm.
And also being fairly new to the home recording thing. Until this pandemic, most recording work I'd ever done had been going into a studio. Uh,
Right.
so I've been having, a wild roller coaster ride of learning a crash course in using a DAW and home recording and getting some of that gear and the use of
Yeah.
plugins to emulate certain preamps and compressors. And so when I'm doing a lot of this remote sessions I'm doing is a little bit of a self-learning tool where I'll try a different um, signal chain of different plugins. Like, okay, let's see what this compressor and this preamp combination sound like for this. So,
Hmm.
it's been fun and seeing, also when you're using the cat bass versus the P bass, so on and so forth.
Right.
What different sounds I'm able to get, and yeah, I it just solidly holds up as being, you're gonna get a solid bass performance with that instrument. And
Cool.
it goes back to what I was originally saying with my original um, understanding or opinion of what a short scale bass is. In my mind,
Hmm.
it was either a good bass for a guitar player to have or a good learner bass until you get bigger or grow up and put on your big boy pants,
Right.
right? And,
Right. Right.
and this bass just shatters that concept because I find myself using it on gigs, using it uh, in recording. And the first couple times I brought it on some gigs, I grabbed my double guitar case and put my 5 string and the cat bass in it because I wasn't confident yet, not knowing the instrument that well yet. Like, am I going to get into a tight spot where I feel like I need the other bass? And
Hmm.
the last time actually both times that I did that for like a function gig, like it was a private event, the the 5 string sat on the stand all night and never ended up using it.
Right on.
You know,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
or even a couple tunes that I probably should have switched because there were
Hmm.
some, low E flats, low Ds that you would expect to hear, and I just didn't want to change. It was like,
Right on. Hey, I got an interesting question for you.
yeah,
So your experience is so deep on upright. How do you feel the cat bass relates to an upright sound? Because the first 200 of them shipped with a mute, and I know you have a mute also. And you could get a pretty good sort of thumpy,
yeah,
uprighty flavored
yeah,
thing, I think. But I'm curious your opinion on that.
yeah. That's interesting. Truthfully, I haven't explored or thought of that much. Because usually if I'm looking for an upright thing, I'm gonna grab my upright.
You have it, yeah. You can do it, yeah.
But that said, I have many times encountered being on a gig that was electric, and then somebody either wanting to buy time or fill up at the beginning of the night with some jazz tunes to kind of be space filler before we get into like the party songs kind of thing. Where I'm thinking, oh, I wish you told me. I would have brought the upright too. Here I am. I got to make it work. And so often what I'll do is roll off my tone if I have a 2 pickup bass, roll onto the neck pickup,
Mhm.
and before getting a Nordy mute, I would use my hand and mute by the bridge and use my thumb and try and get a darker, thumpier tone, or
Mhm.
sometimes pluck right over the edge of the fingerboard to get real dark, floppy kind of sound. Um,
Sure.
do my best to kind of emulate what the upright would feel like, what it would sonically fill the space like. And so I definitely, I think I did that for 1 or 2 tunes. The last gig I did with the cat bass, where I, switched over to the neck pickup. I put on the little mute and I put it on the. I wish I could remember what the frequencies are, but the most high is cutting. The
Right. This I like to call it super dark. Yeah, or the
yeah, the
third
super
setting. Yeah,
bass.
yeah,
So
yeah.
all of that. So it was just like, you know,
Hmm.
and it's great. I mean, you can really, especially in a live setting where it's out there, it's gone. There's no rewinding and listening really close to the magnifier. It definitely can pull that off.
That's cool.
And that's
Yeah.
one of the things. The 2 basses I've had the best success in doing that with is my 5 string cruise with your electronics in it and the cat bass, and I think
Hmm.
that speaks more to the depth in the electronics
Okay.
necessarily
Yeah.
than the instrument itself, if that makes any sense. Like
Sure.
electronics have that kind of depth and darkness in there if you can find how to get to it. Like
Right.
you know what
Right.
I mean? If you
Yeah.
tweak it. It's in there. And I remember with my Cruise, when I first got the Nordstrom electronics in it, I remember being really impressed by the range of sound I could get out of that bass, from really super dark and tubby to really bright and punchy.
Yeah.
The range of sounds within that was, I didn't have another bass that could do that, and I remember being really floored by that. And the
Cool.
bass is just like that. It's tweakable in a different way.
Right.
And to that, I would say, especially anybody who's on the fence about whether they want a cat bass, I feel like you should do a sales campaign of cat bass and Starlifter, match made in heaven.
Right.
If you have the cat bass, you need the Starlifter, or vice versa. Just
Cool.
because for me, the Starlifter goes everywhere. Every recording I do, I go through that before the DAW, and every gig I bring that. I actually had a gig last night. It was amazing. It happened, a unicorn of a moment.
Cool.
It was a live stream for Campus Jacks down in Newport Beach, and it was all upright, but I used the Starlifter DI, and so I gave them the house signal off of the DI instead of the amp, and they mixed it, and it was broadcast live that way. And right as soon as I was done, a friend texted me like, "Man, your bass sounds huge on this." I was listening with headphones, and they were getting the sound of my upright straight to the Starlifter to their board.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I listened back later, and I was like, yeah, I put it on the modern setting, and I just cut the tiniest bit of about 200 on the mids, and that was it, and the sound was just huge. So back to your original question about getting an upright sound, yeah, you can get something. And for me, it's more like if I'm on a gig and I need to do that, it's in there. And to that extent, also paired with the Starlifter, between the two, the presets, if the preset that you've designed with the cat bass gets you like 90% of the way there, the Starlifter's got the rest.
Finishes it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Gets you all the way, push you across the line.
It does. I love putting the two together, and it's just like, this is perfect. Like,
awesome.
Everything's it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I'm glad we're talking about the Starlifter a little bit. I think that's something that not a lot of people are super aware of yet. But I mean, it's had a great reception. I mean, especially upright guys. I was really, I mean, we put that impedance switch on there just because it wasn't a big deal, and we figured why not, And turns out that the thing is really, really killer for piezo upright bass sounds.
And if I'm gonna be totally honest, I forget about that switch most of the time. I probably didn't use it last night. You're saying
it still worked.
I'm just realizing I don't think I made that adjustment.
That's funny, but it's still killed. Right on, man. That's great.
It has a really big full tone. You know what it does. I don't have to tell you. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely love it. And like I said, anything I'm tracking, and also when I'm tracking upright, I used to be the guy that was like, if somebody in the studio came towards the pickup on my upright with a 1/4 inch, I'd say, no. You're not taking a direct signal on the upright. That's going to sound awful. Those pickups aren't meant for that. They're
just microphones. Yeah, that's it. We're going to pure. Yeah.
But I have found when I'm tracking at home, and I have talked to some engineer friends who were really kind of like, come on, you got to do it. I said, okay, let me see. And I do 2 tracks, two channels. I'll do the mic, and I'll take it direct through the Starlifter, and I'll just feather that in underneath the mic. So you're hearing the mic, you're hearing the quality of the bass. And when I mute it and see what's different, there are some low-level, like, subs, like real low bass that you'll get out of an electric bass that the upright microphone isn't going to capture. It just kind of floats away in the air.
Right.
And I found when I feather in the pickup through the Starlifter, just underneath the mic, it sounds like the mic, but there is a presence on the bottom that the mic can't capture.
Right, a depth. Yeah.
And so I've been loving doing that lately, especially if it's a tune where it's more of a groove thing. They want upright, but it's kind of funky.
Right.
That's just perfect for that, because now,
cool.
It used to be if I would try to do it, I'm like, well, the upright's not going to quite carry it. You don't feel it on the bottom.
Right.
Now that I've been doing that, once again, the Starlifter to the rescue.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is about the cat bass, but I have a hard time separating the two.
Cool. I do the same thing. I mean, I it's just part of my setup here at home. It's just odd. I just don't even think about it anymore. I just plug my bass in, hit the mute switch,
Yeah.
and I'm playing. But I mean, I think I've started to take it for granted a little bit, which
Yeah.
is kind of funny. But it's sitting down there. It's always there. It's always on. And yeah, it's as a recording tool. It's a pretty powerful box. So
Absolutely.
super fun. Well, I think I don't know if you have anything else cat related or anything you want to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
But I mean, you haven't really had a chance to show it to many other players. I mean, that's one thing about the current pandemic situation is we don't run into musicians just like we normally would have before. So
it's
yeah.
been weird like that. But I have been using it, and I think I've gone a little more quiet on social media during this time because um I have had some work, not what it was. Like the first few months of it, probably March to June, nothing.
Mm.
But over the summer, some work came back a little bit, then slowed down again, and then the last, the fall a little bit. And I think out of being conscientious of the situation, I've not been one of those guys that's like constantly doing an Instagram story and posting like, pre-gig pics. And here's my bass setup for tonight's gig, which I used to do all the time. And so I because of that, I've given less visibility to the instrument than I could have. I think I posted I had a Halloween house party. I think I posted a picture of myself in a cheeseburger costume with a cat base on me. So
Nice.
probably the best promotion I've given it so far. But yeah, I
Cool.
felt a little bit self conscious about the whole social media thing for me has largely been for like it is for a lot of musicians a bit of a promotional tool. Like how
Hmm.
visible are you? I've had people when I talk about booking gigs say, "Oh, well, send me your YouTube channel." I was like, "Oh,
Right.
that's what it's
Yeah.
now, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And so because of the lockdown and the pandemic and the gravity of the situation, when I have been fortunate enough to have work when a lot of friends and colleagues aren't getting anything, I've chosen to be quiet about it.
Just stay humble about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's still not a lot and it's still not enough. It's a struggle as far as that goes right now. But uh,
Right.
I you know I just feel like it's not the right time to be doing that. But that said, when I'm doing stuff with working on projects with people doing tracking and stuff, and like with that story I told you, I'll tell the person like, yeah, I didn't tell him ahead of time that I used the cat base because I wanted to see his reaction, but
Right. Right.
I wasn't going to be like, oh no, secret,
Yeah.
no, I just wanted to first see his reaction before I said anything.
Sure.
But yeah, I have told people, and the artist I'm tracking for tonight, doing a session for him, I'm planning to use the cat bass on one or two of the songs where I think it fits great. Um,
Cool.
and so yeah, I'm using it,
Right on.
and I'm happy to tell anybody who asks, like this is and I almost forgot you when we started. You said you could say something about experience with the bass or your son. My son, who's 9, is learning bass. His
Cool.
elementary school has a quarter size upright bass,
Oh wow. Yeah.
and so he's been learning on that. And the irony, my experience was I started with the electric and then got into the upright. Um, I started a little bit younger because my dad was just a crazy bass player. When I was 4 years old, he put a bass in front of me and said, "Here you go. That's your E string."
Wow. Awesome.
So with my son, I've been a little more like, well, let's just see how interested he is. And he loves doing the upright. We have fun with it. And when I got the cat bass, like I told you, on my way into the shop, I was like, "You are not buying an instrument. You do not need this. Don't do it." On the way home, I'm like, "How do I rationalize this?" Well, it's short scale. I started on a short scale. This would be great for my son to learn on. I
There
mean,
you go. Yeah.
so I'm rationalizing. First, I'm talking myself out of it. Then, once I've bought it, I'm rationalizing why this was okay to do.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
so I got home and I said, "Listen, I got something I want to share with you. Um, to be clear, this is mine.
Right.
But if you want to learn the electric bass as well, this is a smaller bass, so it would be a really great way for you to physically get into it until your hands get bigger. That's how I started on a short scale." And he saw it and he was like, "Whoa, that's the coolest looking bass yet!"
Oh
Like
man, it's fun.
absolutely, because as a kid, like much like I felt like a kid when I saw the early designs, like a kid's mentality, the design of it, the
Yeah. Yeah.
shape of it, the angles on it, the headstock,
Right.
it grabs you. And so he right away was like, "Oh my God." And I said, "Okay, here we go." And I shortened the strap, put it on him, and started taking him through the paces, like, remember your G major scale, where's your G?
Yeah.
And so funny, most bass players, because of frets, they know where the notes are and they look at an upright and they're confused. He was the opposite. He looked at it and the frets threw him off. He was like, "Well," like he was putting his hand where he thought it would be, but those frets made him confused. He's like, "Well,"
Wow.
I was like, "No, that's it. You got it. Like, don't let the
Wow.
frets confuse you. That's the same, same notes." But the frets were confusing. But he absolutely loved it, and he sat there jamming.
Wow.
So it's like, every other day he comes in my room, and if I've left the cat bass, I have like a rack where all the guitars sit, and then I have the stand for the one that's currently being used right next to my setup.
Sure.
So if I had just been doing something with a cat bass, and that's the guy on deck, he'll come in and right away grab it and start playing.
Awesome. I love it.
So
Yeah.
honestly, it's there's so many great things about it, and it's so accessible in so many ways. Physically playing it, I just touched on that
Mhm.
briefly earlier, but for me, I find a lot of the technique that I've developed, this just kind of elevates it because things are just that much easier to do,
Right. Yeah.
and yeah, it's just such a cool base.
That's awesome. Yeah. It definitely, I mean, it definitely has a, I mean, I've shared this bass with tons of people now at NAMM shows, 2 years at NAMM shows, and then people coming through the shop, and almost to a person, when they pick it up and they start playing on it, they just get a big grin on their face. It just makes people happy and giddy in a way that is really, really gratifying as a creator and a builder to come up with something that gives people such tangible happiness,
Yeah,
right off the bat. It's really a fun thing, the quality of this particular instrument. So I
yeah,
love that, the story relating how your son feels like
just like
got so excited about it too. Yeah, it's
absolutely.
great.
And so then
Cool.
that brings me a quick question to you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because I saw the early stages, on social media, the Goya Panther bass, right? That was sort of
Right.
the spark. Um, what I'm just curious, what made you look at that and be like, "Oh, I can do this better"? Like, how did you get to that? Like, was it an immediate thought of like, "I like this, but it's not right," or was it something that kind of like was gnawing at you, and gradually the idea came to fruition?
It was one of those situations where there wasn't a lot of intent at the beginning of it, other than, wow, this old bass is funky and it's got some issues.
Mm,
What if I designed something that addressed those issues, and then did like a modern take on the switches? Like, how, like, that would be an interesting problem to solve. Like, how, because the switches on the old Goyas are these weird mechanical things with levers, and I mean, they're bonkers. And actually, one of the things we did on one of Juan's basses, one of Juan's Goyas, Juan Aldretti, was to fix and kind of bend some of those contacts that had gotten jammed in a case when it was packed improperly. Um, and then I actually made like a foam protector so that he could put it over the buttons and then put it in the bag so that it wouldn't get jammed. And
huh,
I was just like, that's just, you know, that's a drag, that these things are sort of fragile. And then the way the strings go across the headstock, and
yeah,
the G string rubs on the D string. It's just like,
yeah,
what happens if you fix that? And then the other thing was the Goyas. Well, they're few and far between, and they've gotten very expensive, partly due to Juan and Yannick and everybody getting super into these things. And so it just sort of started to unfold, like, well, maybe there's a market for something like this that's a lot cheaper than an old vintage one that's going to have all these quirks and issues. And then it just sort of, the juices started going, and I just started creating and solving problems, and coming up with another idea, and it ended up something, I think. I mean, I don't want to come across as arrogant or self-important, but somehow the sum of all of that ended up being quite a bit more than what an original Goya is capable of. Um,
oh, absolutely,
it just, especially the big one is that all in the series setting, and then the extra dark tone knob. Um, that's the setting that Bob Glob prefers and tracks with and loves, and
the series or the
series with the super dark. Yeah.
I
Um, Yeah, it's that massive subby synthy thumpy thing. I mean, when I record all the stuff that I've been doing lately, if you follow me on social media at all, it's musically, I'm really going for that dubby, dark, thumpy kind of synthy sound. And a lot of times I'll use it to double another part, and it's something that you feel more than you hear.
Yeah.
And that particular sound again is something that a lot of the heavy pro guys, I mean, it's kind of I guess a secret thing now, but it's getting out. But that's something that those guys and the engineers that they work with and the producers really love that sound.
Yeah.
So and that's something that the original Goya does not have. It just doesn't offer. It's not there. So it once I started getting into the creative flow, it just kind of carried me all the way through this thing. And it definitely, I'm super grateful for how it all played out and the reaction that it's getting now. It's really been very humbling and amazing. It's changed my life.
Oh man.
In a pretty amazing way, and the lives of everybody that works for me. And
that's so great.
You know, it's allowing us to take what was essentially basically a pickup company and kind of grow it into something completely different because it's been so successful.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been really something. So
and deservedly say, I would say deservedly so, because ever since I first became aware of you and the products and the shop, I've been singing the praises. And there's a lot of great boutique based companies out there, but it is, you know, a niche market. There is
right.
a small clientele, really, when you look at the big picture of everything, right? And you know, everybody knows about Sadowski and Federa, you know. And in my opinion, your products are on par with the best of the best.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I don't feel as though it's as well known. I
Right.
felt like you're like the Southern California based secret. and but like what you said, you touched on something too that I've experienced. When you talked about the improvements you were able to create in making the Acinonyx base, compared to what the Goya Panther base was, that was sort of the spark, the idea to create this. I've noticed that as well. Like when you're talking about vintage bases that people want, they want them, you know, a little bit of the status of, oh, I got this vintage instrument, a little bit of the vibe and the sound. And when an instrument is old and been used, there is a character to it.
Totally, yeah.
My P bass is just, it's a monster because it was treated like a monster. It was
Right.
it was destroyed. It was left for dead when I got hold of it. I had to have it rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a character there. But that said, even the best conditioned vintage instruments, there are some quirky things that can either be problematic, or you just learn to, the instrument kind of trains you. You know, oh, on this bass, that spot on the neck is funky. I just don't go there that much because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember an early visit to your shop and playing one of your P basses, and most of my experience with P bass was my own, where it's a beast, and the neck always has a little bit of a warping to it because it was just destroyed. And I played your P bass where the neck was just perfect, and I remember just playing everywhere on the neck and being confused, like, why isn't there that weird spot where things don't sound right? Like,
Right.
why does this feel and sound like a P bass, but it also feels and sounds like a modern design bass, like a, you know, I don't know, like a Federa or a Tobias or whatever, you know,
Right.
any
Yeah.
boutique bass maker you can think of. It had that quality to it while still feeling like an old P bass, and I was so confused by that, like emotionally conflicted, like what? And I've, you know, and I haven't actually ever played one of the Goya Panthers, but from playing the cat bass, I had that same experience of, like, there's not a single spot on the neck that doesn't work. You know,
Right.
sounds are consistent throughout. Like, I'm sure this is the same scenario. Like, I'm sure this was what that original vintage bass had, some weird things. I mean, besides what was already publicized in your posts about, like, the headstock and
Mm-hmm.
buttons and all that. But I'm sure there's a playability factor that's a modern understanding that wasn't well understood or executed with the old
Right.
vintage stuff. And I've noticed that across the board with the stuff you make. When I played your P bass,
Yeah.
wow. I
Yeah.
mean, I wasn't like in love with my P bass, I'd be, you know, signing up to get one of these right now, because it's everything my P bass is, but without the problems.
Right. Yeah. Well, that brings an opportunity to bring up something that we don't talk about a whole lot with the cat bass. And that's that I designed it with a compound radius. So it actually has a compound radius, which is not something that vintage instruments have, or even I don't even know if the concept was around back then. So and that's part of what makes the thing play evenly all the way up and down and makes it consistent and easy to deal with as a player. And that's a quality that I mean, I picked that up when I worked for Sir Guitars way back in the day, 98 to 02 roughly. And that's something that I'm committed to. I won't build a bass without a compound radius. It's too important. It solves lots of problems.
Yeah.
And I think it's required for an instrument. So
Yeah.
That's something that I was also committed to solving, on improving on the original instrument with. And I think that's part of the reason that you noted it feels so consistent, even, and fun to play. So
Yeah.
cool.
And you know, that I think is like, you know, something about the day and age we're in now, where we have the benefit to, if we're the kind of people that do our homework and learn history, learn how to do, you know, where things came from, and get to the next point to build upon, to look back at the way something was done and say, okay, that was how it was done then, but that's proven to not hold up well.
Right.
If we take the original concept and then update it with some more modern approaches, or techniques or technology, marry the two, keeping that characteristic, that quality
Right.
of the original concept, and updating it in a way that stays true to that, but then enables it to kind of move forward into the next phase, and allow the players to be able to use it, because it's a drag to have a cool vintage bass that's cool and it's great for one thing.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, well, that's not coming out on the gig, because it's one thing isn't the whole gig.
Right. Yep.
And I'm a big proponent of people like knowing the history, learning where something came from. Because I've
Mhm.
had a lot of students just with bass playing that, you know, I remember years ago when I lived in Boston, I had a private student came to me, could barely hold the bass correctly, wanted me to teach him how to play like Flea. I was like, oh, okay, well, cool. Let's get to work. And here is your G major scale. Here's your C, you know, start through some basics. And while you're playing your scale, let's make sure we hold the bass this way. Let's, you know, technique things, and kind of a bunch of stuff all in one. This is going to get you there. By the third lesson, he was done. He was like, man, I told you I wanted to learn to play like Flea. You're just showing me this stupid music school stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to, but Flea would even tell you got to learn to do this stuff first, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've encountered that a lot with students on the instrument.
Yeah.
They don't want to know the foundation. They don't want to know the history of it. They see no reason for it. They want to slap like Victor Wooten, and I say, okay, well, let's check out Larry Graham. I don't want to do that. I want to do this. I'm like, okay, well, there we are. You know,
Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
that mentality applies, and I think, I don't think there are as many people that understand that significance in their given field. And I think you show that very adeptly with what you've done with the cat bass and the other instruments you've made. Like I said, when I played your P bass, I was like,
Right.
true to the design, to the original Leo Fender, you know, classic, you know, not the original
Mm-hmm.
P, but you know, the classic P bass
Right.
he's come to know. Um,
Right.
but it's brought something new to it that steps up the game while staying true to it.
Right.
And that just shows like a knowledge and understanding of, you know, where we came from, that enables you to get to where you want to go. And
Right.
I don't know if a lot of people are necessarily aware of that when they're learning music or when they're checking out an instrument. But to me, like, it was apparent from the moment I played one of your basses. I was like, okay, you know, this isn't like a, oh, I want to make a cool looking bass. This is somebody who has done the due diligence to understand and know this is where it came from. If I want to get to there, I gotta go back and understand this first. You know,
Right.
I'm making an assumption there, but I'm pretty sure I'm right
Uh,
from the way your instruments hold up.
I think that's a good way of putting it. It's, and I think I mean, for me in my process, it just comes from really deeply getting into something and engaging and learning about something, like what I can remember the moment when because I used to not be a big P-bass guy, I was like, whatever, they're cool. And then we had one in the shop that a customer was selling, and it was this old, when he brought it in, it was a naked alder body, and it looked like an old deck. It was all split. I mean, some of the splits in it were like a half inch or an inch deep.
Oh my god!
And the fingerboard, it apparently had been laying in water or something, and it was just funky. And he was like, "I want to get it refinished." I was like, "No, it's so cool the way it is." But he paid for us to have it lacquered, and so then we, on the neck, my painter, I just told him, I don't know, try not to wear off or destroy the old finish. And so he just sprayed lacquer right over the old, like worn out, vintage, funky neck. And it turned out super cool. Anyway, I still didn't think too much of it, but I sat down one day and I played it a little bit. And then I hung it back up. And then I went out in the wood shop and I was starting to work. And then I was like, hold on a second. That is, I got to go back and play that again. Like, something about it grabbed me at that point.
Yeah.
And that was when I really started to understand and open up to what a P-bass is. And I know there are a lot of people who scoff at, it's just another P-bass, blah, blah, blah. But that was the point where I was like, wait a second, what is really going on with this bass? And really started to appreciate what that instrument, intentionally or not, from an original concept through execution from Leo and whatever, it's become so foundational to music, in general. And I started to understand why. And that's sort of that opening. And I mean, that's kind of how, for me, experiencing different gear or instruments, or like something about it grabs me and pulls me in,
Yeah.
and so then the idea is, how do I keep the good? And on that particular bass, which I eventually sold, it had a 1 3/4 nut, which is just not my favorite thing. It's too much. And so I started building my instruments with a 1 5/8 nut, which is what they call a B neck, and in between, right? And then, just the compound radius and getting all the details right. I mean, that's how, to me, and that's kind of the same process with the cat bass related to the Goya. Was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I don't like this and I don't like that. We'll do it different. We'll do it what feels to me to be a better way of doing it. So,
And I
yeah.
think, my impression is that, besides the natural curiosity in you to, like, well, what could I do differently? How could I make this better or different or unique? Um, is rooted in an understanding, right? Besides your knowledge and experience with the lutherie and the electronic design, besides that being a foundation of that allows you to do your craft, your art, there is, like you said, when you tackle a particular project, you go all in. You want to really
Mhm.
side of it, and it's that mentality, I think, that comes through, is that it feels as though, like, I could see somebody, superficially not really understanding and just be dismissive of the cat base, like, oh, that looks like a gimmick, short scale,
Mhm.
quirky design, whatever. But
Mhm.
everybody that's played it has been like, oh no, there's a lot to this,
Yeah.
like, this could viably be the base for the whole gig. This isn't
Right.
like, because like I said, the first time I brought it on a gig, I brought it with another bass, being like, I'll use it a little bit and then I'll switch back for, kind of
Mhm.
waters. And I was like, no, this is like, oh, I'm finding something else I can do. This can do everything.
Yeah.
Which does lead me to one curious question. Um, I've always been a 4-string guy. It wasn't until a few years ago that I became an owner of a 5-string bass. And so that was a new world to me, and something that friends of mine, when they saw me with a 5-string, were like, what happened? Would have never
you've
drank the Kool-Aid,
you've turned to the dark side. Yeah.
And And I was like, don't get me wrong, I still haven't figured out the 4-string all the way yet, but it was offered to me in a situation. And for this on the Manhattan Transfer gig, there was a few tunes where that low 5th string was really crucial. It really changed being able to deliver what I needed to deliver, right?
Right.
But I'm even with years now with a 5-string under my belt, I'm still at home on the 4-string when I'm under pressure. If I'm on the 5-string, I'm on under pressure sight reading or something, that 5th string becomes my thumb rest, because
Right.
if I'm like going on muscle memory and sight reading, that 5th string messes me up. So I
Yep.
try to pretend it's
Sure.
not there until I've gotten myself oriented, and then I think, can I incorporate it?
Right.
So that leads me to my question: is there a 5-string cat bass in the works, or is that even possible with the design of it? I've never
I
seen a
kind of,
scale 5-string. I don't know if that's a thing.
I the purist in me
Right.
doesn't want anything to do with a 5-string cat bass.
I
I don't think it'll work. I just don't think. I mean, there are a lot of people who build short scale 5-strings. It works great. I just don't think part of me wants. I mean, I know a few guys who might end up watching this, if they can hang with us through a whole hour as we've gone on and on here, which is cool. But it's a lot. But there, I know a few guys who are, yeah, if he makes a 5-string, I'll get one. And part of me is kind of like, man, just get one. Just get one and rediscover what it's like to have a blast on a 4-string bass, to feel like you've taken off all of the constraints and you can just do whatever you want on it because it's small and it's fast and it's light and it's only 4 strings, and you don't have to think about that 5th string and worry about how to finesse it to get it to sound right. And it just, so right now, I guess I don't have any intent of making a 5-string.
not trying to paint you into a box. You
No,
can change mine at any time. I was just curious.
yeah, that's how I feel about it right now. We'll see.
I get
Actually, what I want to do before the next thing that I want to do, which I've been talked about it a little bit with a few people here and there. I don't think bass players really care because I want to make a 6-string guitar version of the cat bass. So a cat guitar. So that's kind of the next on my design plate. Say that again?
I said that's cool.
Yeah.
Have you gotten as far, or can you even speak about any like pickup configuration ideas, or is that
Well, I
wraps?
definitely I don't even know really, but I definitely want to use the push button switch situation again.
Sure.
And it'll have to be a little more tailored to make, hopefully on a guitar, to make all the settings equally as usable as they are on the bass, you know. So, but yeah, the I see it as a playground for doing fun and interesting things in terms of pickups and switching and tone settings.
Yeah.
Hopefully in a way that is equally as engaging as it is on the bass, you know, and usable also, hopefully totally usable in sort of a cool, fun, funky way,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So, but it's at this point I haven't even opened the CAD software yet to even start playing around with it. I'm just kind of, it's fermenting still.
Sure.
Which is kind of how I like to work. I like to let stuff, it tells me when it's ready.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, now I have to do this. Like I got some ideas that need to be firmed up and put into, you know, real world drawings or prototypes or whatever. But it's not quite ready yet. So, but
well,
it's coming.
I'll be watching for that.
Very cool. It should be fun.
Yeah, and you know, one last thing about the cat bass, since that was what this is supposed to be about, just to talk about its versatility one last time. Through this, you know, lockdown pandemic, I started a project for myself that I hope will see the light of day sometime the next year, of recording what I'm calling a bunch of bass vignettes, which are short compositions. And the concept is that I sit down on whatever bass, upright, electric, what have you, and just improvise something, but improvise with the mindset of like I'm writing a song while I'm improvising.
Cool.
And then if it feels like it works, then I go back and I start layering more tracks to the original improvisation. So it starts with improvisation, and then I flesh it out and see where it goes. And I did something for someone with the cat bass who's trying to do like a drum and bass thing, and he wanted some electric bass on it. And he sent me the tracks, and he didn't give me any indication of what he wanted. And I did something, and I just got this idea to just rage over the end of the track, just take like an epic guitar solo type of solo. I have this Renan cuff distortion,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
and I kicked that on. I think I had on my envelope filter, and I just went bonkers. But I did the whole track with the cat bass, and I just went bonkers. And so I laid down like a bass track, and I saw his lane. So I sent it to him, and he was like, "Wow, man, that's kind of amazing, but that wasn't that wasn't what I wanted." And so he's like, "Here, let's get on the phone and talk about what I was looking for." He's like, "It's not my fault. I didn't give you any indication. That's a totally different direction than what I wanted." So we got together, we fixed it, we did it, and I did it all with a cat bass. So he did this track that he was trying to get synced. So I forgot to mention that I did use it on something like that. That was a different type of area to work on. But so I kept the stuff that I did.
Sure.
And I went back to it the other couple weeks ago, like with my bass vignette. It was like you; it was brewing in the back of my mind for a while. Like that was such a fun track. There's got to be something I can do with it. And I went back to put up the session, and I took out all of his stuff he sent me, and just kept my original bass stuff. And I rewrote a whole new thing around it. But I used only I one of the things I've set as a rule, besides the original thing has to be an improvisation I can build around it. I have to stay with the bass I used. So if I'm on the upright, everything has got to be the upright. Like I did one where I put like a percussion track in, but it's me like hitting the back of the bass for a kick drum and
Oh,
stuff,
cool.
and then
Yeah.
EQing it to make it actually sound like that.
All right on.
But so I went back to the cat bass track, and I played all these other tracks around it, but I did everything with a cat bass, and the variety of tones between the bass and the Starlifter settings and the plugins you can use with the UA audio and Logic and all that. I'd be amazed if anybody knew it was all done with the same bass.
Wow.
Because the range of sounds, and it's not finished yet, but I'll send you a preview of it to check out, because I'm pretty tickled by it, because I'm totally, it may even be too long for my concept of like the vignettes, because I think it's about 5 minutes long.
Oh, right.
But I just went bonkers because the cat bass was new and I was exploring what it could do, and I just went bonkers, just raging a solo with all the effects on, and it wasn't right for the project that I was tracking for, but I just kept it being. I'm like, there's something cool in there. I got to do something.
Right on. Awesome.
And
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just another testament to the range of that instrument. I've got all these different bass tracks. Some sound like doing chords, where it sounds like it might actually be a guitar, because all that kind of stuff. But anyhow, just one last plug for like the versatility of that bass.
Right on.
When you hear it, you're gonna hear like, there's the guitar comping, there's the bass lines, there's the solo, there's another speed part that's clean, and the range of sounds. Like even me, when I go back and listen to it, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that was all just the cat bass.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I love it.
Pretty fun.
Right on. Well, so where can people like find this stuff if you're gonna put it out in the world? I mean, you're on Instagram and Facebook and
I mean, at the moment, I have some music up on Bandcamp.
Okay.
I have some stuff that I recorded a couple years back that I never released. I did like a jazz album. Jazz. I mean, I don't think it fits the traditional straight ahead jazz moniker, but it is, for lack of any better label to give it. It's all instrumental, saxophones, so on and so forth, all upright. That's up there, called the Downtime Session, and some singer-songwriter stuff I've done. And so I've been, with the whole pandemic recording, besides tracking for clients, I've been, when I can squeeze in some time for my own stuff, I've been working on new material. The bass vignette project I'm working on, and some more singer-songwriter stuff that I'm hoping I'll be able to finish up in the next, sometime during the next year. We'll see, the pace of called life things get in the way. But at the moment, I'm posting things to Bandcamp, and when these new projects, when I do have them finished, I will probably put them on a bigger release, like to Spotify, the streaming.
Oh, the streamers. Yeah. Okay.
But at the moment, it was just, the whole thing with Bandcamp started their Bandcamp Fridays, and like looking at all my gig calendar just go up in smoke. I was like, well, if this makes me any money, this music I've been sitting on, I think, now's the time, if ever there was.
Right. Sure. No kidding.
So yeah, so people
Cool.
can, I'm on Instagram and I'm on, all the social media things. So I put a music page up on Bandcamp and I have my website. So somebody just Googles Gary Wicks. My website's garywicks.com, and
Cool.
my other music moniker is Bassy Groove. So there's a lot of I think all the social media stuff has Bassy Groove in there somehow.
Right on.
I forget what I label things.
Cool, man. Well, I want to thank you again for doing this. It's been a pleasure.
Totally,
And
pretty cool.
yeah,
I'm psyched you asked me to go on and on about how much I love the cat bass.
cool. Yeah, it's turning out not to be a too hard of a thing to do. Hang on a second. Man, suddenly the lawnmowers are firing up over here. I don't know if they're coming through my mic or not, but it's loud for me. So anyway, thanks again, man. And yeah, hopefully we can sometime over the next year we can go see people play these instruments in the real world together in a venue or something. That would be something, right? So, but cool. Thanks so much, Gary, and take care, dude.
Yeah, you too. Cool.
We'll see you.
All right, bye-bye.